I'm fine standing.
I'll grab a chair. Do you want? I'll grab a chair for you.
The high school. All right, awesome. Well, welcome back, everyone. Before I make just some quick announcements here. So if anyone saw one of our vendors that was here today, they want to make sure that if you have completed this, please turn it into them on your way out. So it was their Pet Farm has saved 25 million lives in the AIDS campaign. So if you can turn that into them, that'd be great. All right, so now let's get on to the juicy part, unintended, after watching Invisible begin. And we will now introduce our panelists. So I will go in the order, pretty much from left to right. Oh, lastly, of course, this is an obligatory plug. If you like both BPOU and Food Justice Coalition, feel free to scan and support our cause. All right, so I guess a quick introduction for myself, as some people aren't that too familiar with me. So I'm the Chief Medical Officer for Health Choice Utah. So that's actually a small insurance plan owned under the University of Utah Health Plans. Trained in family medicine, board certified in family medicine from the University of Utah, as well as Dr. Eric Bailey, who's actually my senior when graduating. Wow. It's all right, I'm sis. But yes, finished in 2012 and then practiced in about 9 different states in emergency rooms. And now my passion is making sure that we increase access to care through making sure that people are signed up for insurance, and also by founding POU. So let's first go into Adrienne Terry. So she's a graduate from the University of Utah Physician Assistant Program in 2017. She currently specializes in endocrinology, providing services for obesity and weight management and diabetes management, and also particularly PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome. And she has a passion for treating obesity and helping patients to understand their value of food. And then when we have Dr. Eric Bailey, kind of alluded to her a little bit. She's board certified in family medicine and a physician at the intensive outpatient clinic at the University of Utah. She earned her medical degree from the University of Utah, and as I stated earlier, she completed her residency in family medicine. And now we have Melanie Davis, is the owner of Planted Healing Mental Health Practice, or PLAY is a way to say the acronym. She's a mental health practitioner, co-founder of Continuum Mind Body Collaborative. She's a highly regarded speaker, as you'll soon hear tonight, educator, wellness advocate, and child advocate, and psychotherapist. We have Dr. Miriam Padilla, is the medical director of the Intermountain Health Live Well Center in Provo. It's a mouthful. Board certified in endocrinology, obesity medicine, and lifestyle medicine. She's also certified lipid specialist and has been a vegetarian since the age of 13. Thank you for being here, Dr. Padilla. And last but not least, who welcomed me into this space, Jeanette Padilla, Executive Director of Food Justice Coalition. And no, I don't have to intro you again? Oh, okay. And Utah Equity Coalition. She's also an activist, community organizer, and plant-based private chef. So thank you all for coming tonight, and I'm ready to get into the discussion. Get all cozy with everybody here. Can you see me okay? I feel like I should be down in. It's all right. It's all right, dear. I'm gonna go right over here. All right. Let's get into it. So, I actually connected quite a bit with the film, being a Washington, D.C. native, and particularly growing up in a black family in inner city D.C., a lot of the pressures I connected with being judged if I didn't eat meat, being judged if I didn't enjoy it, also food being highly associated with love. If you didn't eat what grandma put down, then you may not love grandma. So there's a lot of cultural habits that are not always foreboding of reducing the likelihood of heart disease and many other diseases that go along with that. So in light of that, my first question are, what are the keys to increase adoption of a vegetarian or vegan diet in BIPOC communities? And Dr. Padilla, you can take this one.
Wow. I guess it looks, you could go many routes, right? You could talk about the health and wellness of vegetarian plant-based diets, vegan diets. I think for me, I was thinking personally, I was born in Puerto Rico. I'm a registered Taino tribal member. And initially at the age of 13, I started being vegetarian more for the love of animals, right? And also for health reasons. But I think now it's more to be congruent with my ethics of anti-colonialism. And, you know, if we look at our traditional diets in indigenous-based communities, it is mainly plant-based. You know, it is basically being self-sustenance and being able to grow all the food that you need. In Puerto Rico, our indigenous people, our Reno people, you know, grew everything they needed initially. We don't have any large mammals, land mammals in the islands, in the Caribbean, that are very natural, right? They were brought over on slave ships, right? The pig and the goat were mainly brought over because they were what could fit on the ships. And so to me, really, that is a product of colonialism. And also, if you look at where the indigenous people were placed here in reservations, right? They were placed on land where there is no water, there is no fertile land, right? Knowing that if they were not able to provide for themselves, it would lead to extermination of people, right? And so for me, I try to live by the ethics of being against colonialism, and to me, being able to be more plant-based fits with that.
But how do you increase the adoption in the BIPOC community?
In that, I think it's looking at what may make other people be congruent with that lifestyle as well, right? And could be anti-colonialism, could be, again, seeking your health benefits of it. Of course, you know, we have more rates of diabetes, heart disease in people of color. We know we have more cancer rates in people of color. We know all of that can be improved by plant-based diet. So that's definitely something that you could also.
Okay. Adrian? Of course, I had it. Okay, good. How do you think that a way to increase adoption of vegetarian and vegan diets amongst BIPOC communities?
Truthfully, I think education, right? Like I asked my dad before I came here, I was like, Dad, I'm gonna go sit and talk about veganism, and we're gonna talk about, you know, what does that look like if you were to pull meat out of your diet? And he was like, all your taste buds are broken, right? Like, so, but he just does, I think it's an education thing, right? He's very much, like you said, Mom made it, I eat it, and that's just kind of a comfort food. So for me and my patients that I see in my clinic, it's always about education. I'm like, what if we tried a meatless Monday, like they said in the movie? And the answer I always get is, what does that look like? Like, what would I even eat if I took meat out of my diet one day a week? What, you know, and so then we're just kind of educating them on all the other foods available to people. Does it have to just be a salad? No. They're, you know, they're always like, I don't want to be a rabbit. I want to eat things that make me feel full. And so I think increasing the awareness and the education and allowing them to kind of explore different food options, I think that's a big part of just kind of like expanding veganism as an option to the issue.
Good, good. Dr. Baden, what do you feel is meant by having a plant-predominant diet? Maybe not necessarily strictly vegan, but maybe is that a bridge into increasing adoption? A better tone on these minds.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Dr. Ferguson. I think it's important to express what plant predominant means. There's some data out there that suggests that reduction of ischemic heart disease or heart disease, stroke, diabetes, etc., is best served with a plant-predominant diet. So that means the majority of the food that is sitting in front of you is from a plant-based source and not an animal source. But other studies have suggest that it's mostly abstaining from red meat that is the protective value, and so there is some cardioprotective benefits in white meat like fish and chicken. So if you cannot make the full transition to abstaining from any animal products, that is also an option that will help lower your risk for cardiovascular disease and diabetes. But again, plant predominant is more than about 60 to 70% of what's in front of you is some form of plant. Not all plants are created equal, but still they are healthier than a red meat or meat that has been overly processed, full of nitrates, or meat that is deep fried. So those are things to consider. Tell me the question again about plant. What else did you want me to add to that?
No, I think you answered it perfectly. The biggest thing that I would want is can this be seen as a way to bridge people into just going, all right, I'm omnivore to I'm a vegan now because my doctor said I had to be.
Transitioning away from the traditional American diet is going to be very intentional and a slow process. And in order to be successful and have this be a longitudinal process in your family or your community, yes, you can't just adopt that overnight. Thinking about this Monday, thinking about a snack or one day a month, even one meal as a start. There are cookbooks out there that might be helpful. There's an Afro-Caribbean cookbook that's really enjoyable. So some of the foods that you are typically privy to, that you are aware of, that you enjoy, you can change and still enjoy, but have some alternatives to it. The one thing that I thought was interesting in some of the data is that a plant-predominant diet didn't necessarily improve cancer risk outcomes, but it definitely does have a more conclusive reduction in your cardiovascular risk.
Melanie, when it comes to one thing, we've talked about education, and it might be one's motivation to have a more plant-based or vegan diet. What do you feel is the biggest keys to getting behavior change to occur in adults and even children to try to this change?
That could be the tricky part, right, is examining ways to wrap our head around the idea of a new concept and then initiating change. And in any environment when we're trying to create change, there's a lot of natural resistance that happens in us just as human beings. And sometimes the idea of this slow transitions and embracing ideas, but sometimes just exploring the idea of having fun with it, right? This past month and kind of leading up to this, I thought, how about we just make predominantly plant-based foods, in our home? And it was interesting to see the idea of embracing this change that was really large for some and not a big deal for others. The idea of just kind of putting some new things that still looked fun and new and delicious in front of my family kind of took some of the language of the idea around this big, huge embracing of change and just, oh, here's an option, plant-based option, and here's a non-plant-based option. I didn't do a lot of discussion around it, but both looked beautiful. They looked very similar. And so sometimes not overthinking the idea of change where we kind of psych ourselves out, overthink it, and then we naturally want to resist, and just exploring the idea of maybe replacing one little thing here or replacing your breakfast and just seeing what that could look like to transition to a plant-based breakfast. And then slowly allowing yourself to ease into change can be helpful with behavior modification.
Good. I like that. So my next will be for you, Jeanette. And then I want to try to do a little bit of mix and mingle with the audience here, because I want to ask this question to some of you. So one thing that I sense from watching the film is the judgment. When someone is coming from a family or has friends or peers, coworkers, or you're just going out to eat and you're the one asking for, do you have a vegan menu? Are there any vegetarian options? And the looks or the opinions or the smirks that start to occur, and that can cause resistance to want to change to adoption. How can one confront that?
I think it's important to find your conviction and your decision to be more empowered in your food choices. So when I first went vegan 6 years ago, for me it was an ethical decision. I did it overnight. I had a 3-day-old baby at the time who I decided I was going to also raise plant-based. So for me, my conviction was ethical. I didn't want to contribute to animal suffering. I didn't really know about the health benefits or the environmental impact. But my conviction was that I saw baby animals being taken away from their mothers, and having a 3-day-old baby made me sob. It was also like the hormones were just like in it literally made me sob watching this video. I had to go hide in the bathroom because I didn't want my friend who was watching the film with me to see me sobbing. But that created a really strong conviction for me that has helped me never waver and never feel embarrassed to seek out better food choices for myself and for my little one. And I think it's also, I think people they become maybe nervous or embarrassed to ask for vegetarian options, for vegan options when they're out with other friends, because you want to be part of the pack, you want to be accepted, you want to be, welcomed into the group, you don't want to be an inconvenience. But I think, again, right, if your circle are people that care about you and that care about you living a healthy lifestyle and care about respecting your food choices, they will offer you some grace when you're trying to figure out at a new restaurant what you're going to eat, and you're asking your questions, and you're being, a little bit, of a nuisance or what have you. So I think having that conviction, whether it's for health reasons, maybe diabetes runs in your family, and you want that cycle to stop with you, maybe that's your conviction. Maybe you want to instill better habits in your children or your partner or your friends, and that's your conviction. I think finding your conviction, having that be your North Star, is incredibly powerful. And explaining to your loved ones, I'm doing this, and this is my conviction, and if you care for me, you'll respect my choices going forward with food, right?
I like that idea. I mean, sometimes the conviction would be, my father developed colorectal cancer, and he was a heavy meat eater, and I wanted to support him now that he's a cancer survivor. He wasn't following his doctor's advice and adopting a vegan diet, and I want to support my dad in doing it. That's why. So it would be really hard sometimes. So I think that is a key point. Mind you, it's your business. You can eat however you want and keep that person to yourself. But that may also influence others to say, oh, wow, that's a really strong reason. Maybe I'll do something similar. So now, a question to the audience, or I would say, do you have anything for our panelists before I continue on? Oh, I saw a hand up. No? Okay, all right. So, we have one, okay.
So,
Let's get that over there.
do I need to stand?
You know,
My question in the film, one of the gentlemen spoke about his desire to continue to work out, and everything that goes along with that. It's just not about building muscle and things like that, but feeling nourished. And I heard someone speak about feeling full. I'm just getting to the point now. I don't need to feel full to feel like I have absolutely nourished myself. So, you have any advice? My biggest thing is finding options. The one thing I would say was, I don't know what I'm going to eat now if I give up meat. I'm down to just chicken. Everything else is gone. And I'm trying to get rid of chicken. I'm particular about where I eat chicken and where I buy it. So, I'm looking for options to place chicken with a full plate, nice, colorful, hearty plate. So that's really where I'm at, trying to dispel the myth in my mind that if chicken's gone, that's it. I'm not going back, and will I survive? So, is there any advice about where to find options and how to approach them?
Dr. Baden and Mel.
It's on now. Thank you for your question. I think being predominantly plant-based is beautiful in that it helps you slow down, helps you be more intentional, and connect yourself to your body and get back into your body, especially if you're going to be an athlete or want to engage in more movement. For you, I think you might resonate with, I don't know if you know former NFL star Omar Bolden. He's on Instagram. He is now vegan for the past year. He also puts in some recipes and workouts, and I think he looks good. There's also the Afro-Caribbean cookbook that I mentioned. It's very easy and simple to go through. It's tangible, something you can look at. Happy Brain Foods is another beautiful way to look for recipes through Melanie's cookbook. But there are ways. There's also a documentary called Game Changers. It's about being an athlete, so I think that's on Netflix. So we have lots of options.
And just to piggyback on that, that was a huge thought of mine also, where how do you feel full? And when you're looking at, in mental health, we talk a lot about nutritional psychology and the balance of protein, carbohydrates, and the micro and macronutrients that you need. And often when people feel hungry, those things are out of balance, right? And a lot of times the things that people need to pay a lot more attention to is protein and carbohydrates that are slowly digesting. And so looking at protein sources like seaweed, beans, legumes, tofu, all those kind of options, and making sure you're getting enough protein from a mental health standpoint that's supportive, but then also from a fullness standpoint that can be helpful. But I love all the resources that are out there now for vegan bodybuilding and meal plans around, balancing enough nutrients so that you walk away from a meal feeling very satiated and full, and you can kind of prove to yourself that it doesn't take an animal to do that.
Thank you. Any other questions before I move on? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, real quick. I don't know if you've ever heard of the concept of volumetrics, but that is a concept, and there's books about it, where you're trying to eat food that's going to fill up the space in your stomach more, that has less calories. So for instance, you could eat a couple Skittles, right, and it's high calorie, but you're not going to feel full. Versus you could eat a whole bowl of spinach, a salad, and it has less calories, but you're going to feel full because it's taking up the space in your stomach. And so I think if you recognize that plant-based eating, you can eat a lot of it, and you can feel very full, like you eat a really good meal. Versus if you eat, some junk food, you're going to be hungry sometimes in a couple hours because it's low nutrition, it's low value, right?
So my next question was that. Oh, go ahead, please. Yes, please.
So one more thing, I think it's important to remember progress over perfection. So you're essentially going to learn a whole new way of eating that is very different from what you've known for up until this point in your life, right? So you have to give yourself some grace and some patience and really aim for progress over perfection. To be back on what everyone else is saying, beans and legumes are your friends. They are full of protein, and they're also full of all those macronutrients, phytonutrients, your vitamins or minerals that are not only going to help you feel satiated, but are also going to nourish your tendons, your ligaments, your skeletal system, your nerves, everything you need to function to feel good in your body. So I would encourage you to go to protein sources that are primarily beans and legumes that you can flavor with any spices that you like, and they'll give you that fullness and that fiber, which is heart healthy. Yes, really big on the fiber, which will help you with mitigating cardiovascular disease and help you feel full, as well as giving you all those additional nutrients for the rest of your body systems. So you don't have to make it complicated by going to all the mock meats. If tofu's not your thing, that's fine. Beans and legumes have so much protein, and they're packaged with healthy carbohydrates and proteins and other nutrients that are phenomenal for your body. So go that simple and cheap route, because beans and legumes are, so affordable. Yeah, and there's so many to choose from. Exactly.
Yes, Dr. B. Only then when we talk about beans and legumes, the process really good.
It's the hot topic. I just want to point out to be careful about mock meats. Some of them are over-processed and have quite a tremendous amount of sodium or salt, which can affect your cardiovascular system, mainly like your blood pressure, which can affect other heart disease, swelling, edema, etc. So just look at the nutritional content, but if you're going to make your own black bean burger, for example, that's different, but just keep that in mind.
And my question next will be for you, Adrian. And we can kind of split between you and Dr. Padilla. What are the benefits, and you can go over benefits and you can go over, say, harms. So what are the benefits of a woman versus a man participating in a vegan diet? Because this was alluded to quite a bit.
Quite a bit, and actually I hadn't really done a lot of research until I watched this movie just recently. My brain initially went to, if I'm eating whole foods, things that I can grow or things that I can pull from a tree, versus things that are filled with toxins and fillers, and it slows down everything, right? My metabolism, but also it fills me with more toxins and fillers, and those toxins and fillers are going to mess with my hormones from a systemic standpoint, right? So where I may not feel terrible, I may age quicker, right? I may go through perimenopause at an earlier age because I was filling myself with fillers for so long, right? So I think the benefits are that you're allowing your body to maintain a balance of natural hormones longer and feel better. You're gonna have better energy levels, and when you have better energy levels, in my opinion, people have the energy to go and work out, and then it kind of builds upon each other. So I think that the benefits for women, obviously, based on the movies, that you're gonna have better feminine hygiene, more energy. She probably didn't touch on, from an orgasmic standpoint, I would imagine that if everything is well running and functioning, that you're probably going to have better intimate relationships as well.
Good. Dr. Medea, any harms of vegan-based diet for men and women? Kind of what I'm hinting at is, are there certain people that should not maybe prescribe these diets?
I personally don't think that there's a lot of harm to it, truthfully. Yes, you can be vegan or vegetarian maybe and not eat healthy in the fact that you're eating lots of processed foods, right? So ideally you want whole foods, plant-based, less processed, right? So you could eat a bunch of Oreos and say, oh, well, it's vegan, but it doesn't mean necessarily that you're eating healthy.
Or Taco Bell, like you alluded to.
Right. And obviously that's a great start when you're converting to more plant-based. But ideally you want to get to more whole foods, straight from the ground type of foods. There are some people that can develop vitamin deficiencies being plant-based if they don't know how to eat all colors, all types of veggies and fruits that give all the nutrients that you could get in plant-based diet. But so sometimes patients will develop, vitamin B12 deficiency, iron deficiency, and so on. But that can be managed if you just study up a little bit on, where you can get those sources. But in terms of other benefits, I think by gender, there's a lot of autoimmune conditions, especially in women. COVID has brought about many antibodies that I see in patients with Hashimoto's or thyroid disease. And there's all other, lupus and so on, many autoimmune conditions that we see all the time. And there's no medication that I can give you to lower those antibodies, but we know that you can have an anti-inflammatory diet to lower that autoimmune response and inflammation. And the anti-inflammatory diet is basically being plant-based, less processed, right, less sugar. And so when I have patients who want to know what to do about those autoimmune conditions, I say, eat plant-based. That's what's going to improve you.
But are there any conditions where they should avoid eating altogether?
I personally don't think so.
Dr. Baden?
Possibly not avoid completely, but I think, again, being more intentional about what you're including in your diet. For example, if you have osteoporosis, making sure you're having adequate vitamin D sources. Vitamin D is actually a hormone. It's synthesized from the sun, and it's very hard to find in non-fortified foods if you're trying to find it in a plant-based food. For example, somebody who is Caucasian can go out in the sun for about 15 minutes and obtain their recommended daily source of vitamin D. But for someone of color, as dark as I am, it's going to take 2 to 4 times that length in the sun. And at high altitude, is that something we're going to recommend? We want to make sure that with pregnant women, of course, getting enough iron, making sure that they're taking vitamin C with their iron so that it's better absorbed. The type of omega fatty acid that's found in a plant is an ALA type of fatty acid, which is not well broken down into EPA and DHA, which are the sources of omega fatty acids that are important for brain development and the heart healthy types of omega fatty acids. So supplementing is going to be important, but again, it's more of being intentional and making sure you're getting all of those resources.
I don't think that precludes you from being plant-based. I think you just have to research a little bit more as to where you can find those. Yeah, more intentional about what you're eating.
Okay. My next will be for you, Jeanette. What are easily accessible plant-based sources of protein that contain healthy fats, like Dr. Baden was just speaking about in B12? That's a concern at all.
Beans all day long. Not so much for B12. So B12 actually comes from the dirt, and everyone really should be supplementing with B12, not just vegans and vegetarians, although we're the ones that get all the flack for it. B12 comes from the soil, bacteria in the soil. So typically we would get it in the olden days when we were harvesting our vegetables, and we, didn't give them a super good wash, and we weren't obsessed with those veggie washes that we have now. You would get some of that vitamin B12 naturally from the ground, or you get it if you eat meat, because the grass contains it. The cow eats the grass, and then you get the grass through the cow. So B12, everyone should supplement with that, regardless of diet. And as far as protein sources, I'm gonna go back to beans, because they really are. You have to think about your protein. There's a really good book, before I forget, a really good book by Kathy Freston named Clean Protein. And she talks about protein sources and how they're packaged. So if you're talking about protein from an animal source, that protein compound is gonna come packaged with saturated fat, which is bad fat that's clogs up your arteries. It's also going to come with it can come with pathogens. It can come with a variety of things that are bad for you. And then you cook that protein, and then you're adding in these things called heterocyclic amines, right, from cooking this meat at high temperature. So you have to consider the full protein package of how you consume this nutrient. When you look at plant-based sources of protein, like beans, these legumes, these beans come with not only protein, but fiber, vitamins, nutrients, these things that are really good for you, and they don't come with pathogens, they don't come with saturated fat. So you get all the upside and really none of the downside. The only downside, I think, is if you live a fast-paced lifestyle and you don't slow down to be intentional with your food, you might not have time to eat enough. It's one of the things that I see with a lot of people that are vegan. They don't have time to eat enough food, so they don't feel satiated and they think this isn't working for me. And it's not that it doesn't work for most people, it's that you're not eating enough. You're used to eating really heavy foods that are really calorically dense, but sometimes they're mostly nutritionally poor. When you switch to a plant-based diet, you're eating foods that are calorically lower, but really nutrient high, so you do have to make sure you're eating enough. And then you're eating enough of those foods that will, the complex carbs, right, that are going to fill you and sustain your energy levels. Because if you're only eating salads and fruit for the whole day, the entire week, you're gonna notice your energy levels are low because you're not having enough of those healthy carbs. And your complex carbs are okay, you guys. Like, eat sweet potatoes, eat your healthy carbs. They're good for you. Just don't drown them in dairy products, which that's where the saturated fat comes in. That's what's bad for the cardiovascular system.
But one thing that occurred to me during the film is the next generation. We know life expectancy has contracted here in our nation. Part of that impact is due to COVID. We still don't know the continuing long-term effects for many of us that survive that infection. But what do we do for our children, our Gen Alpha and younger, to bestow these habits upon them? Not only through, do we need to do something to modify from lunch, and how do we get that adoption, to what type of examples can we set now as parents, peers, grandparents, leaders in the community for the next generation?
I feel like I'll rant, so it's like concise.
I think the idea of modeling healthy lifestyles, right? I saw something this week where it showed the school lunches in other countries and how nutrient dense the school lunches were, and then it showed a school lunch in a traditional American school and how nutritionally poor that lunch was. Everything kind of looked monochromatic with color. There weren't bright, beautiful colors. There weren't clean, healthy proteins. And just for us to start to move in the direction of modeling healthy lifestyle, moving our bodies, cooking in our kitchens if we can, having access to fruits and vegetables, introducing our children to things that are alive, go visit a farm, have your children, or even take people to grocery shop with you, take your parents to grocery shop with you, right? Introduce new foods, pick out something new every time you go to the store. I'll challenge, we're raising 3 small children, and I'll challenge them to pick out a fruit we've maybe never tried before, and then they're the ones to prepare it and decide how we're going to eat it. And so I think the idea of just modeling healthy lifestyle choices, and then us being open to adopting those ourselves, right? Of trying something new. It's really easy to get in a routine and our habits and just not want to really do anything different because this works and I may or may not feel great, which we often don't self-assess how we really are truly feeling from an emotional standpoint and physical standpoint. So to pause and do that, but then see what we can add in to just increase our personal wellness.
So, two things. So at Food Justice Coalition, we have an after-school enrichment program, and we have found that all these preconceived notions about children being picky eaters and not wanting to eat healthy foods totally false. I also learned this with motherhood. My daughter would sit on the counter with me when she was, I don't know, like 8 months old, I think it started. She would sit on the counter and she would eat raw pieces of onions. I was chopping onions. She would eat the cucumbers, the beets, whatever I put in front of her, she would eat. She was so curious. Something she would, spit back out. Weirdly, she ate like half an onion one day, raw. Yeah, same. I did that as a child. But kids are really curious about food. And what ends up happening oftentimes, I think, is that as parents, we become so busy with work and just trying to, put food on the table, that we don't take the time to encourage our children's curiosity. And then we grow up to become these adults that have really picky palates. And we don't want to try new things. We don't want to get curious with our food or play with our food. So what we have found, what's been really neat for us to see at Manna Academy, where we teach this after school program, is that we get to expose these children to products, vegetables and fruits that they don't necessarily have access to. One of them being dragon's tongue green beans. Is that what they were, Kenzie?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're these like speckled green beans that they're green and purple. They're really cool. The kids love them. They got to taste them and chop them and like play with them. We also introduced like edible flowers, like really fun things. And then we also introduced very basic things that they don't necessarily get to see, like fresh beets in all the different colors, carrots in all the different colors, things that are really affordable but very accessible. And then we also blend in the like less accessible foods, but that are also that just open up their minds to like get curious and wonder like what else is out there that is edible that I can try that also happens to be highly nutritious. So I think just that exposure and like Melanie said, modeling that behavior, getting curious with food as an adult is super important. Like think about what you eat. How many of you, and myself included, eat the same thing week in, week out? For the most part, right? When do you really venture out? So I would encourage you to venture out and model that behavior for others. With school lunches, it's a little bit difficult because I feel like our educational system doesn't do a great job of supporting our kids with meals. We are trying to change that. So I think we're going to see some changes coming for school lunches. Our federal government is doing a lot to try to change that. So we are making some progress in getting more plant-based foods, more nutrient-dense foods in schools. But it really does begin in the home, and it begins with kids. They're so open to it if we just allow them the time and get curious with them.
Good. Before because I think we've got about 5 minutes or so before closing remarks. Any questions from the audience here or our panelists? Before we go into close. Yes.
First, shout out to the DC area myself. So
right.
Shout out to the team. I find myself over the last couple of years getting more interested in climate change and the environment. In the documentary, so like black people don't care about the environment. That's probably very true. That's a very good stereotype. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts around veganism and environment.
That's great, because that was going to be one of my closing questions. Great DC models.
So where does veganism connect with environmentalism?
Yeah, just your thoughts on it.
Sure, yeah. Obviously there's the concept of environmental racism, as was brought up in the film, right? That we know that communities of color are disadvantagedly placed with other polluting companies around them, less green space, right? Less healthy areas to get food. And so it is intricately connected. Also, again, our fight for Indigenous rights is intricately connected to environmental rights, and to me that is also included to being more plant-based, as I said, going back to our ancestral roots with that. So to me, it's intricately connected. We know that obviously there's more greenhouse emissions when we eat more meat because what's produced by cows and other animal products. So we know that by eating less meat, we're also helping to save the environment as well. It's all interrelated, truthfully. You know, capitalism and environmental justice and all of that. It's really interrelated. So.
Magda, I got there a little bit late. I'm gonna watch the movie, and it's on YouTube, right? Okay, perfect. But I didn't want to miss this. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So I have a son who was diagnosed with heart failure at 14 last year. Black boy, right? And part of the thing they thought might have been COVID, so I'm glad you guys brought that up today with infection. And the other part is, of course, some paternal hereditary things. So how can a plant-based diet help extend the shelf life of his life? That's a good question.
Thank you for your question, and I'm sorry to hear that he was diagnosed so young with something so big. Your dedication to him, your love for him is palpable, and you know anything that you can do to reduce additional heart disease is going to help with his lifespan, with his quality of life. So if you're not giving him foods that are fried, if you're not giving him red meats, if you're not giving him a lot of those processed foods, that's going to help his heart, reduce his risk of developing diabetes, exposing him to foods with antioxidants like berries and red peppers or orange peppers. All those things are going to help him and improve his quality of life. Like without knowing the details of the genetic condition that he is suffering with, we can't provide much more, but anything that will support his heart and reduce his risk of other heart disease is helpful. And again, we know that it's a predominantly plant-based.
So I'd like to give you 2 resources where you can kind of learn more. But as Dr. Beaton said, it's different for everyone, and supporting your son with heart-healthy foods is the best way to go going forward. There's a fantastic organization called Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, or PCRM. So if you just Google PCRM, you'll find them. And I'm happy to write it down for you after this. They have a lot of fantastic articles about preventing and then also reversing heart disease. There's also another fantastic book by Dr. Esselstyn. I believe it's literally called Reversing Heart Disease. That came out a few decades ago. And Dr. Dean Ornish, I believe, also has a book on reversing heart disease. So those are a few, right, it's Dr. Dean Ornish. Those are a few, the reversing heart disease is one I read about 6 years ago. It's fantastic, great information. And it's also backed by some data. The PCRM, Neil Barnard is is he the chief director? Fantastic physician as well. A lot of information that is very science-based in helping prevent heart disease and also reversing heart disease. I'm happy to chat with you afterwards and get you those resources. And then one thing that I'd like for everybody to remember is that I don't want you to give up hope if you have a genetic predisposition to heart disease or to diabetes or kidney disease, whatever it may be. Genetic expression is important, of course, when we're talking about health. However, you have to also consider that diet and lifestyle are what trigger your genetic expression. So if you're predisposed to diabetes, but you eat a healthy diet and you live a healthy lifestyle and you manage your stress, that genetic expression will be very minimal because you're supporting your body and you're to not have such a severe expression of that condition that runs in your family. There's another physician, Dr. Michael Greger, that says diseases run in families because diets run in families. So, if you come from a history of family history where your family eats a lot of processed foods and a lot of really fatty foods, really unhealthy foods, you're going to tend to eat the same way because that's your family, that's who you sit at the table with, that's who you spend most of your time with, right? So this is why it's important to, I think, learn how to make those healthier choices and help bring your family along. So I'm happy, and I want to congratulate you all for being here, for being open to new information to take healthier choices.
One more question.
I'm really sorry whenever I hear anything about veganism or plant-based, I get excited. I'm a trained medical doctor from Haiti, but I'm passionate about health and nature. And you just barely kind of stole what I wanted to say. There is one, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to steal the show, please. There is one domain in medicine we haven't insisted on enough. We talk a lot about genetics, but we don't talk enough about epigenetics, which is about gene expression. And one of the key factors that is determined in expressing gene is our diet, what we eat. And some scientists, they even say that what is transmitted is not really the gene, but the genes that were expressed. So you can inherit the habit from your parents. What they use, what they eat to express their genes, you receive those expressed genes, but the beauty of it, you can reverse it. If you change your habit, your lifestyle, especially what you eat, it's not the death sentence. You can reverse it.
Appreciate that. Probably goes into one of our future events and discussions about genetic testing and the benefits in BIPOC communities. So, to give everyone kind of a closing remark, I would like everyone to try to think about if you are meeting someone in the community, someone in your family, and they are curious about veganism, what would you say?
If I was meeting a family member who asked me about veganism, I think that I would encourage them to, I think I would encourage them to do their own research and play with foods on their own, because I think it's a very personal decision for somebody. I mean, I can preach to them about the health benefits of food all day long, but if at the end of the day they're like, this is family, this is our gathering, food brings people together, all I would be doing is preaching to the choir. So I think that if somebody approached me about it, I would give them the resources that they need, some of the books that were mentioned today, some websites, and then I would encourage them to just embark on their own journey, because I think it's a very personal decision for people.
Yes, I would ask what their goals were, and see how we can incorporate a predominantly plant-based diet into their lifestyle. I want to piggyback off of what you said, but it's very personal, and so asking what their goals are and meeting them where they are with those goals, just being supportive.
To kind of piggyback on both, I like the idea of people tapping into their why. What is motivating you? And again, that's very personal. And we can get so excited about sharing healthy ideas and lifestyle ideas and things to try. And often it can make people feel a little othered and push them away from that opportunity to seek it out. So I love the idea of encouraging people to do their own individual research, but really some self-discovery around what is your why, what would be the reason to explore that change. So you have something to hold on to as you're moving through the idea of change.
I would say that food heals, right? And every bite that we take, you can choose to either heal yourself or harm yourself. So every time you're eating something, think about that. Is this something that's going to provide value and benefit to my well-being, or is it going to harm me in some way? So I would say think about that. Obviously, think about all the benefits. If you have back pain, if you have inflammatory disease, heart disease, worried about cancer, all those benefits. And also long-term, if you want to save money and not have to pay for these expensive medications, like insulin's super expensive. And obviously type 1 is different in diabetes, we know that, but if you want to, lower your cost, eat more plant-based. But in the end, I think it all comes down to think about how food can heal you and choose to live healthier.
Yeah, I have to agree. All of these are great answers. I think it's a big decision, and it's like Adrian said, it's a very personal decision. And there are cultural things that sometimes are a barrier for people. Access can be a barrier. Access to groceries. I think I would ask the individual, as Dr. Baden said, what are your goals? What are you hoping to accomplish? And how can we do that in a sustainable way? Instead of making the flip, from day to night, which is pretty difficult to do because, again, you're learning a whole new way of eating. I do always encourage people to just add more plants to their plate. Whatever you're eating, if you need to keep it the same to make it more kind of sustainable and easy to do, just focus on adding more plants to your plate. Instead of removing things from your diet, add more of the good stuff. Add more dark leafy greens, vegetables, fruits, legumes, the rainbow. Add more, and then slowly you'll start to see that shift, because there's a very real thing that happens that I feel like vegans never tell you about, but I'm going to tell you because I'm your friend. The thing that happens is that your taste buds change, right? So if you're used to eating foods that are high in sugar, high in fat, high in salt, your taste buds are kind of dead to bell peppers. If you eat a raw bell pepper, or if you eat a raw beet, they might taste kind of gross or earthy. But if you're bitter, exactly. But if you're used to eating mostly plant-based foods and you steer away from high amounts of sugar and fat and salt, your taste buds are completely different, and you can taste the complexity of a bell pepper color by color, the complexity of a carrot color by color. I mean, it's like you develop this weird superpower with food. So I would encourage you to just make that transition slowly and give your body a chance to acclimate. Give your lifestyle a chance to acclimate, because it is a lifestyle change. And just to kind of end it with a resource, I'll say that we at Food Justice Coalition are always here to help with more resources. We're going to be having a lot of classes and workshops around food. So if you want to learn more, please get connected to us and attend some of the upcoming workshops. And obviously also, you have to follow Black Physicians of Utah and our wonderful medical professionals, because I am not a physician. I'm just very passionate about plant-based nutrition. That's what my training is in. But it's important to have the health and the supervision of your medical provider to ensure that you're not going to accidentally harm yourself with your food choices.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And thank you all for coming. And let's give a big hand of applause. Take home is you don't have to become vegan tomorrow, but you can slowly introduce many vegan type foods as you slowly become visible. If you have your phones out, we would love your feedback on this particular event. VPOU will be doing another event here on perinatal mental health. We're up on June 22nd at 6 p.m. Please subscribe to our newsletter. Just go to the bottom of our webpage, bpou.org. Do you have a newsletter as well?
Yes. So for Food Justice, it's foodjusticecoalition.org. All the info is on there.
Yeah. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram. Dr. Baden will be, I think, on Thursday morning. You will be discussing maternal health with KSL News. News radio, or no, I think it's on television. Yeah, and I will be on Monday, because Monday is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I will be on KSL News Radio, so I think that's 104.7 FM at 10:35. you tune into that because you may hear a couple of us thoughts on there from time to time. So thanks again for everyone coming out and spending this evening with us. I hope you were all able to take something away that you can impart not only with yourself, but your family, and